Kerri-Anne Kennerley's warning about Labor's gender commissioner. Let's have a look. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Heiser Says. Got my Stein here, and I thought we'd have a look a little bit about one of Labor's policies. And this was brought to my attention because Kerri-Anne, a TV personality, shall we say, here in Australia, middle-aged boomer, as you young people would say. Let's have a look at what she said here, because she's coming out attacking Labor. And I don't know what show this is on, to be honest. I only saw it shared on Facebook. I don't really watch it, but she's great because she brings the normies in to watch videos on my channel.
If Bill Shorten gets in, it is the end of life as we know it.
You know, you may think that's she's being hyperbolic, but in some ways she's dead on the money. She's dead on the money because Labor is, and we're going to see this more today, more than I even imagined. Labor is just so entrenched with identity politics that it's concerning.
Tell us what you really think.
Honestly, without question. Again, Labor government spend. Taking money retrospectively, as they will do, that franking credits, I had to Google that, but franking credits, this is the way self-funded retirees, not to leech off the government pension, they look after themselves. They've got that plan.
I mean, she's making a good point here, regardless of some of the terms that she's thrown at pensioners. People who have planned, and then government are changing the rules all the time. We saw it happen with, the fallout from the Royal Commission. We saw it happen with the, interest-only loans. They change the rules, and then your plans all go out the window. Labor is an element of sovereign risk for Australia, I'd say, at this point. Not that Liberals much better, but you know what I mean.
Going to rip it off them. He'll put in negative gearing. No more investment into houses, so your rent will go up.
And every future generation won't have that opportunity anymore to take advantage of it.
Anybody who believes they're going to be better off if Shorten and the Greens...
But one thing I must add, I do prefer Katter's policy for allowing people to write off their own mortgage interest rate rather than negative gearing. If I had a choice, I'd argue for Katter's one. No, not Katter's. Sorry, Clive's. Clive's policy. You can take that one, Katter. I prefer Clive's policy in that regards.
Get in is under some whoopee-doo cloud. It will never, ever happen. You will tank. And in terms of all this money, throwing it at cancer, throwing all this stuff is just feeding the chooks. Don't believe it.
Feeding the chooks. I haven't heard that one before. I guess I'm too young.
Anybody could possibly go that route. Dig a little deeper. Just dig a little deeper.
Are you working for...
She's telling people to think a bit more. I mean, which is true. But I think a lot of people are just apathetic and don't have the time. They're too busy working their two jobs just so they can pay for their childcare to not see their kid.
The Labor Party now?
But no, honestly, you can. And one thing I'm seriously outraged about, the money, the millions and millions they will spend on a gender commission. So these kids who out there who are gender confused, and there is a percentage of people out there gender confused, they will put up this commission. We, on out like Tasmania, will not have a child and it won't be male or female. It'll be gender free. That'll be national. And also, if you're...
So I need to check that. I don't know if that's real, but the whole, about the gender neutral on birth certificates, because it just seems stupid. Now, sexual dysmorphia is a serious medical condition, and it should be dealt with by medical practitioners. It shouldn't be politicized to this extent. Remember, you're talking with a very small portion of the population, a tiny portion of the population. The money spent on a gender commissioner and the bureaucracy is going to be completely pointless. I would bet that Labor is just doing this for purely political games, and this is where we see the identity politics so ingrained in their culture. So here, Kerri-Anne goes on a little bit just to position herself so she doesn't come across as a meanie.
Child is confused. The rights of your child will go to them. You will have no rights as a parent, and that child will go, I want to be either a boy or a girl. Please give me whatever I need. And you as a parent...
Now, she's made a good point there, because we've seen that happen in Scandinavia. There's certain countries where this is happening, even the UK. In the UK, there's schools where so many children are all transitioning, and a big issue is autistic children on the spectrum. One will do it because they're quite confused, and it's body dysmorphia is, I understand, I've been told, isn't an uncommon thing when you have that condition.
Parent will have no choice. That's the Gender Commission. We are flattening out our society. Put money into kids who need the help, but don't screw around with the other 95% that are doing okay and just a little bit confused.
So that brought it to my attention. I was aware that they were doing something, but it just really brought it home how much identity politics is part of Labor now. And this is an article from the IPA, the Institute of Public Affairs. I recommend you all have a look at it and look at some of their stuff. They produce great content. So, Labor's push for a national gender centre is informed by radical academic philosophies and not facts. But see, the one problem we all have, okay, is that politics and people don't care about facts. Trump proved that. If you want to, you should look at Scott Adams' book. We're in a post-fact world. We're not in a rational world. I don't think we ever were. I think social media just allows it to be exposed to a greater extent. So, should it be elected on the weekend of May 18th, the Labor Party has promised to offer free sex change procedures, set up a taxpayer-funded national gender centre, and appoint a new commissioner for sexual orientation, gender identity, and intersex status issues. Okay. Now, I have got absolutely no problem with that at all, giving sex change procedures, because you're not going to have that many people line up for it. Honestly, 1,300 in all of Australia? I'm concerned that people may jump to it a bit fast, but I am confident that the medical professionals in charge of that, if politics stays clear of it, will do a competent job, because otherwise you can sue for negligence. Make it that simple. If someone is suffering from, issues following the procedure, then sue the doctors. Then they'll be really thorough. But a national gender centre and a commissioner, whenever you create bureaucracy, they need to bureaucrat. They need something to do. They'll create work for themselves. Can you just imagine, sexual orientation, gender identity, intersex status issues? How are these issues in our day-to-day? I mean, come on. Sexual orientation, okay, whoop-de-doo. We're not in the 80s anymore. No one gives a crap. Normal people don't care. Okay, normal people do not care. Even the fundamentalist Christians don't care about that. They're not worried about that. They just don't want you to expose children to things that they want to have control over. They don't care if you run off and do stuff. What was I saying back in the day? Any halls of gore when I'd met a gay friend? Whoop-de-doo. Intersex status issues. This is such a tiny sliver of the population, and from following Jordan Peterson, my understanding is most of them want to transition to the other gender. They don't want to be an intersex they don't want attention brought to them. Okay, they want to try and pass and just live their lives. So this is going to hurt them. So this is completely in keeping with the party's fixation on social justice. Yes, that's quite true. To be clear, when the Labor Party talks about social justice, it doesn't mean things like equality before the law, the equal claims of rights to a citizenship, or free speech. Oh no, we wouldn't have that. Sorry, those are like alt-right dog whistles, aren't they? Alt-right dog whistles. It's funny when I shave my head, because I'm getting old and don't like to see the grey. People think I'm dog whistling. It's funny. No, I'm just vain. So it clearly considers these to be outdated and antiquated ideas which should be consigned to the dustbin of history. No, when the Labor Party talks about social justice, it means the complete rearrangement of society, so there is no privilege, no hierarchy, and no difference, except for the party leaders. Da, comrade, da. This has everything to do with engineering and very little to do with justice. One of the ways it proposes to fulfill the party's self-proclaimed mission to reshape Australian society in its own progressive image is to get society to a point which we will have a genderless and androgynous mass. Fantastic. That's going to be crap. Living in that future. No, everyone will be online then. It'll be like that Bruce Willis movie. It genuinely believes that a genderless world in which there are neither men nor women, boys nor girls will be better. Because if there are no men, women, boys or girls, there can be no difference between us. And if there's no difference, there can be neither oppressor or oppressed. Yeah, but the problem is even if they ever achieve that, they'll just move on to something else. They have to. They need an enemy. That's the only thing keeping these people together. Think about it. All these fanatics on the left, how many of them are driven by hatred? By their disgust at the others. How else would it be so easy for them to just disparage and throw a kind? I won't even talk to these people, to go and yell at them and scream at them. How easy would it be? A reading of Labour Party's 320-page manifesto. Maybe I should do that before the election. A Fair Go for Australia reveals Labour's preoccupation with all things gender. For example, the words gender is mentioned 148 times, intersex 55 times, and transgender a total of 35 times. Compared to homelessness, 45 times, immigration 24 times, and red tape 3 times. This is brilliant. Good on you, IPA. Who was the author? Who was the author? Bella. Ah, beautiful Bella. Good work. Good work. I love this. Well, that shows you just to a T. The manifesto's authors have clearly cast themselves in the role of social justice warriors. Oh boy. Many would have undoubtedly been through the university system where they have absorbed the postmodern radical gender theories, has been peddled in the humanities as unquestionable orthodoxy since the 1960s. I remember when I was at uni, I just laughed at all that stuff. I remember there was a female professor that had a construction industry award just for women, and I couldn't understand why. You know, you get a separate category just because you happen to be born with a vagina as opposed to a penis. Yep, cool. It is evident from the Manifesto that its authors have clearly been worshipping at the altar of high priestess of gender theory. What about climate change? What about the god? Who ranks? Do you think gender theory outranks the climate change god? You know? French feminist and socialist theorist Simone de Beauvoir. Back in 1949, she concluded that one is not born but becomes a woman. She argued that while there is a distinction between sex and gender, where sex is the biological framework of men and women, gender is the social construct of experience and masculinity. Experience, okay. There is no doubt that there will also be acolytes of Judith Butler, who decided in the 1990s that the perception of gender had become outdated, posing instead that gender is nothing but a performance. No, I'd imagine that Judith's life is probably nothing but a performance. I imagine that the lives of a lot of these social justice warriors is nothing but a performance. And the problem is now, as opposed to the 90s, we have a stage and it's called social media. People can make a living off their performance these days. You know, that's what it is. That's interesting. Learning something new every day, Florian. Good work. I take the University of Sydney's Gender Studies blurb. The Gender Studies major, it claims, encourages you to think beyond common sense ideas about what it means to be male or female, and to recognize instead the many different ways that people embody and experience gender. Oh yeah. Meanwhile, over in the Women and Gender Studies department at the University of New South Wales, the department boasts that its scholars are outwardly looking, politically engaged, and theoretically innovative. It's gender studies. This entire field is going to add no value to our civilization. None at all. I bet you if they stamped that out tomorrow and made it illegal, like in Hungary, it would make no difference. None at all. We'd probably have a few less SJW YouTubers, you know. But then again, I don't use any of their content to laugh at anymore because that's been done, and I'm too lazy to watch this stuff. So, what's the economic impact? Let's get rid of it. We aim to make WGS an area of study that has the capacity to explain the world and perhaps even change it. And by Jove, they're doing their level best at changing it. By example, last year, the Herald Sun reported that in Victoria, the Manningham and Melbourne City Councils were going to remove all books and toys deemed to be enforced gender stereotypes from the kindergarten, schools and libraries. Yes, I remember that. I did a video on that. The Victorian book burning. Well, that's a really old video I did. Noddy, Winnie the Pooh, Thomas the Tank Engine, Barbie were all going to be discarded on the grounds that they were not gender neutral enough. Unsurprisingly, the source of the madness was the ANU, which at the council's request wrote a report called Building Children's Resilience Through Respectful Gender Equalities Relationship Project. And just think, that costs money, okay? They get a research grant for that type of stuff. That's our tax dollars going on garbage like that. Okay, that'll cost. The problem is they'll do this. It'll cause some psychological problems with children. Then you have Medicare costs going on. So I'd say gender studies is probably a negative. A negative. If we get rid of it from our universities, we would probably have a net positive on our civilization. That's just some theory crafting there, but my gut's telling me that's right. My gut is telling me that's right. The upshot of the document was that it claimed that children as young as 2 were not only guilty of stereotyping, that's called learning, but they were also developing signs of gender bias. Yeah, of course. These people that probably never have their own kids and see how they gang up on each other. It is often thought that children are relatively free of social biases. Are you kidding? And stereotypes that adults exhibit. No, that's where we get them from. We learn them as a child. I remember talking to an architect who had a friend who was being a stay-at-home dad, and he said, must be great, He goes, nah, kids are very stereotypical. They're not tolerant, and your wife is too tired to have sex with you, because she's the one working, and you're the housewife, so it doesn't work. The evidence suggests that the foundations of these stereotypes are actually set very young. Oh, funny that. Wow, common sense. But wait, there's more. Research also suggests that stereotyping and prejudice along race and gender lines can be observed in children as young as 3 and 4 of age. According to the report, toddlers who are barely out of nappies and who are just coming to grips with the experience are apparently guilty of stereotyping and gender bias. Well, yeah. You're going to have an in-group preference as a child. That would be hardwired, I'd imagine, into our brain, because you don't want a child going and cuddling up with a wild animal or someone from an opposing tribe. You want them to be around their parents and people they know, people that look like them. No, I understand this is a representation the IPA is putting of just the insanity of this type of research, but when did common sense become something special? When did common sense become something special? So thankfully, the report's recommendations were not taken up by the councils. In Tasmania, the Greens and Labor have already passed a bill that will remove gender from birth certificates because they believe to be a form of discrimination. Idiots. I feel sorry for ancestry people in the future. In South Australia, the birth certificate options are non-binary and a whole lot of garbage. What? Why don't they have male or female? Oh, bloody hell. They're going to laugh at us. The future will laugh at us. If we don't, if it all just doesn't disappear because, everything's stored in digital, and if that gets lost, it's not going to be like a stone tablet, but they will laugh at us. I will guarantee you they'll be laughing at us. The visionaries at the ABS have decided that in the 2020 census, Australians will be asked about non-binary sex and or gender identity sexual orientation. Cool. These are examples of just how wide the divide is between mainstream Australia and the political elite. It is clear that the latter believes that one of the most pressing needs for mainstream Australia in 2019 is to establish a national gender centre. What a waste of resources. What an entire waste of resources. But you know whose fault this is? This is everyone's fault because normal people don't get involved in politics. And these losers that write these reports and, dye their hair purple and, take their partners, boyfriends, children to the library to listen to the drag queens, they are the problem. They're the ones writing this stuff. They're the ones influencing political opinion. They're the ones calling for violent assault. They're the ones hitting people with bite locks. They're the ones supporting Antifa. What is of great concern as the election looms, and Australians should be rightfully concerned, is that the Labor Party, if elected, will impose this radical gender theory to society, whether society wants it or not. So, fantastic. Great article. And I would highly recommend everyone have a look. Become familiar with the IPA. But what do you think, guys? What do you think? Do you think it's fair? Do you think Kerri's, outburst was appropriate? I bloody well think it was. Do you think her call to action for people to look further and look deeper will actually heed anything? Does this sound like a workers' party? Does this sound like a workers' party? I did a live stream yesterday for like 2 hours, and there were definitely other left-leaning, worker-orientated parties that I think are much better suited to your vote if you're going to vote Labor. I wouldn't vote Labor if you're a worker. I don't know why the hell the unions want to be involved with this rubbish. I do not know why. Anyway, guys, please like, share, and subscribe. Ding the bell to see my daily updates. And I will do another live stream tonight where we will be going through some other states for all their Senate candidates as part of my Shift the Window run-up to the election. I think we'll definitely do Northern Territory. It's nice and easy, and then probably a few other long ones because it took about 2 hours, 2.5 hours, so it's pretty tight. But we've gone through a lot of them now, so take care, bye. See you, everyone.